Hello, everybody, and welcome into this week's 30 Minutes program. We have a very interesting program, and we're going to be talking about athletics and education and how the two are married to one another. My guest today is Dan Black. He is the superintendent of the Bradford school system. Not only that, he is the president of the Tennessee Legislative Council of the TSSAA, and that stands for the Tennessee Secondary School Athletic Association. And because we know each other for a long time, I'm going to refer to Mr. Black as Dan, or Coach Black, as some of you know that he has had a terrific career in his years of being on the hardwood. He's in the Tennessee Sports Hall of Fame. He coached basketball in Alamo and Crockett County and a few other places, but most importantly, his heart is with Bradford, and he loves what he does, and that is to help athletics and education be the very best together. Dan, first off, thanks for visiting with us. What's going on with the TSSAA as we speak?
Well, there are a lot of things that are going to have to be considered in a short time. There are some bills or bills that possibly could be put into the legislature that would affect athletics greatly. One of them is a transfer rule. You know, we have transfer rules, but they're looking at changing some of that stuff completely, and it's going to be very interesting.
Now, there's a subject that people have a hard time understanding in the word vouchers. First off, can you define vouchers as the governor of the state of Tennessee is wanting to provide vouchers for students to go to other places and getting their education?
They're calling it something else, but that's what it is. Actually, I think will be some legislation, and there are some that will be adopted, I think, pretty quickly in the next couple of weeks that would allow individuals to attend a private school, and they would pay over $7,000 for tuition to go to that school. That's something we're going to see. Of course, I think most school people would like to see that fail. They'd like to see it not even come up, but I think it's going to be. We're going to have a vote on that in this term.
Mm-hmm. So, define vouchers as you know that from being in a position as superintendent of the school system here in Bradford.
Well, they'll simply give parents $7,000, I think it's $54 or $75 they can apply toward a private school or homeschool. There's some question of whether they could do that or not. A parent could just keep their kid at home and school them, and state would pay them $7,000 a year. That question has not really been answered yet, but that's kind of the feeling that seems to be going around in some areas. And the biggest thing, there is no accountability for this money. I can register my child in a private school, and, that's okay. If you want to do that, I think that's good. But there's no testing to see, how that child might be performing in that private school. And yet we're testing, every student practically in school every year. And I think a lot of us in administrative roles are concerned about the accountability to that. That doesn't seem exactly fair. If I'm getting state money and I'm held accountable, which is good, I think high standards are great. We need to have those. But I think anybody receiving state money needs to be accountable for it. And that's not in that bill right now. It's just they're going to give them the money and they do what they want to with it.
So what I hear you, if you have, say, 4 children, that would be 4 times $7,000, or it may be more than $7,000. That would be $28,000 that would go into the family, and they could have online schooling or homeschooling, and that money would not be replaced in the public school system. So the system would lose, and we'll round it around to $30,000 on 4. But the bottom line is that puts a little pinch, or maybe a large pinch, depending upon how many students get moved.
It could make a difference. And I don't think we're not going to have a lot of movement in, to people going to private schools and so forth. That's not going to occur. Our schools are pretty good, but if you had, like, say, 4 or 5 students, that's a teaching position, and the bill has not come up yet exactly what's involved in this, whether it's going to include just private schools that are open now, is also going to be approved for even homeschooling. That I haven't seen any language that said that's going to be part of it, but that's kind of what the run-of-the-mill is. That could include that. But what they have right now is you're going to a private school.
Is there oversight in those situations?
No, and that's my concern. There's no accountability for that money. Mm-hmm. You don't know how that student's performance is going to improve by going to a private school or not. They're not going to measure that. And that's the thing I think is most frustrating. I think they need to have accountability, just like we do. Now, accountability is good. There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, you want to do a good job and you want to show that you are. But that's kind of, seems a little bit unfair.
Mm-hmm. Superintendents across the state have an organization called TOSS, T-O-S-S, correct?
Correct.
And what does this organization do?
Well, they kind of try to help, superintendents to, they help in training of superintendents and so forth. And we also have the TSBA, Tennessee School Board Association, and both of these groups are looking very dimly at a new law that would expand the voucher program that we have right now. Mm-hmm. Or they're calling it education success or something, but it's really just a voucher.
Let's move on to another subject that pertains to education. You have a lot of basketball players and football players and soccer and on baseball and so forth. How does that affect high school athletics? We're first off talking about vouchers here. Is there a corollary here with this?
Well, I think what you would see if a student is in a public school or another private school and they change, then because of transfer rules, they would not be eligible that first year if they had an athletic record in a particular sport. That's what our policy says. There is a possible bill that would do away with that. And the bill would be worded as if you could transfer at any time to a school and you'd be eligible in that school. That's not the way it is now. There has to be some circumstances, moving or something of that nature, where that student has eligibility.
Let me have some clarity a little deeper on this. So, for example, let's say that you have a student playing softball here at Bradford, or for that fact, it could be any school anywhere, and the parent chooses to homeschool their child, and this player is, say, a sophomore, and they want to go and play a little closer, let's say, to Greenfield, because maybe the road is easier to get to Greenfield than it is to Bradford. I'm just being fictitious now. But what would happen there? Would that player be able to go ahead on a voucher and play wherever they want to play, or would they even be eligible to play?
A homeschool student is eligible to play now. Now, I think the same eligibility rules apply. You got to have it. Right now, that homeschool student is eligible in his district. Okay, that would be out of district because that's not to be lived in Weakley County, mm-hmm. And so it's going to be a question about all that. Mm-hmm. Right now, no.
We're talking with Dan Black. He is the superintendent of the Bradford school system. You have been for many years the voice of reason, and I say this in much kindness, overseeing TSSAA's future, if you'll allow me to say that. Now, you came to Bradford in 2007, and you've been a superintendent since that time. How long have you been on the Legislative Council?
I think this is my 25th year.
Mm-hmm.
I know I got on the council when I was was principal at Crockett County High School, mm-hmm. and I think in 99 or 98 sometime when I became principal there. So I think this is my 25th year.
There are
close to it.
Two parts of TSSAA. One is the Board of Control, and the other is the Legislative Council. Now, who are these people? Not necessarily to name them, but what do these two agencies or organizations do?
The council deals with primarily bylaws, the bylaws that govern TSSAA. The Board of Control, they deal more with the implication of or implying those bylaws to different things. Mm-hmm. It's really, I guess, the best way to sum up. They have two different roles in some ways, and yet they're all alike. The fact that we're trying to make policies that make TSSAA more effective.
Now, you've been on the board for a number of years, and you serve as the president. What do you do?
Well, I've been on the Legislative Council for 25 years, so what do? We, as president, I have to organize meetings and conduct the meetings and serve on committees and so forth that the TSSAA might have. Mm-hmm. But we deal primarily with policy-making aspects.
Is there any policy been made in the last couple of years that is of significance to the folks that are listening to our program today?
Well, a lot of them are probably significant, to some of them, and there's some. This year, we're probably going to have to deal with this transfer rule. We've discussed it. We are afraid that a bill will be submitted that would just open up transfers to anywhere at any time, and that's what we're really terrified about. It in the state of Florida right now, a student could play football at one school during the fall, and winter go play basketball at another, and in the spring go play baseball at another, and be eligible at all of them. That's the way the policy is right now in Florida.
Is that a good idea?
No, it's not a good idea. It's be disastrous. And the schools in Florida are not real thrilled with it either. I talked with the executive director a few years ago about that situation there, and boy, schools were really disappointed in it. It's a nightmare, and it would be a nightmare for us.
Why would that council make those policies?
We wouldn't, but our legislative body can.
Well,
the legislative body, their laws override ours, as far as that would be concerned, if they made it a state law that this was the case. Mm-hmm.
So why would Florida make such a rule that allowed that to take place?
You need to ask their legislators. I do not see any advantage of it, except you got a kid that might want to play a number of places. I don't know. It seems like a lot of confusion to me, a lot of recruitment and things like that. That's not best for athletics in the state of Tennessee.
You and I have known each other for a number of years. I've never asked you this question, and that is, how about a state of the state feedback on how high school athletics are doing here in the state of Tennessee?
I think our high school athletics are doing real well. I mean, you look across the state, you have a lot of support from your schools, as we've always had in Tennessee. Our communities support athletics very well. It's an important part. I think athletics plays an important part in any school system. It's amazing. You have good athletic teams. You seem to have fewer problems in school, and kids seem to enjoy being there more. And it's very positive for the school when you've got kids that are participating and they're enjoying it and they're being successful. It really makes a difference.
There have been many sports that have been added to high schools here in Tennessee. Most recently, I guess, would be volleyball. Soccer's been taking off for a long time now, and I don't know what's next. Wrestling, of course, is very important in some of the other schools. and as we all know, football, baseball, and basketball. And I'm about to ask you a question that I had not thought about, but is there another one coming? And I'm going to go right ahead and ask you, is it maybe pickleball might be one of those that you might say that's going to be one of ours?
Lacrosse will begin next year. We'll have lacrosse for men's and women's, and flag football for ladies is on the horizon.
That's high school?
That's high school. That's correct. Pickleball, I could visualize that occurring. We passed a resolution at our last meeting that if a school needs to have, for a sport to become sanctioned by TSSAA, you have to have 20% of the membership being a part of that.
What does that mean?
That means 20% of your schools have to be playing that before we can make it. Before we can make it a sport of TSSAA. But all these things are coming. You're going to see. We're going to continue to add them. I would not be surprised if we have flag football for ladies in the next 2 years, maybe before that.
Can you tell me what's the difference between flag football in high school than maybe the flag football that we have on maybe, out at the Parks and Recreation?
It would be very similar. It's my understanding. I mean, that was proposed at our last meeting, and the council tabled that so we could get some more information on it. But it could be there. A lot of your larger schools have that right now.
Is there a need for flag football, or is this just somebody that came up with an idea and said, let's see if we can float this?
There are a lot of schools, especially in Middle Tennessee, that have flag football. They're playing in a league and things of that nature. So it's coming.
Mm-hmm. What else is coming?
Well, pickleball has been mentioned. I think that's something that it wouldn't surprise me we see that in the next few years.
Well, the problem that I see, and I may be incorrect about this, but the problem I see is the one that's been there for a long time, and that's trying to get enough officials, referees, umpires, and these kinds of folks. And I mean, you've got to have enough people to be able to have a ball game.
And that was one of the issues for lacrosse. Lacrosse, we've been discussing lacrosse for 3 or 4 years, but that was one of the issues, is finding enough officials. And there's a state lacrosse organization, and we talked with them about that. We got to have officials, and they've done a really good job in those areas where lacrosse is very popular, training people where they can officiate.
Is that a fall or a spring sport?
I can't remember which one. I think it was fall. No, I don't know. I can't remember when they put a season on it.
But these are the things that are now coming along, and I would go back to that question that I said, how you could do all of this if you don't have enough referees coming in. Now, is that under TSSAA or is that under the Referees Association?
Yeah, it's a combination of both, TSSAA and the association itself. But we're paying better for officials, which has helped some. We are schools are encouraging some of their people to get involved in it, and we've seen an uptick in the numbers. They still are not where they need to be, but it's going to be a problem for a few more years.
You made a major change this past year. One, on a personal note, I think has been very positive, but I think you probably have a bigger stake at that. But you have a young man that has taken over for the previous director of the TSSAA, and Mr. Mark Reeves seems to have a lot of good ideas that are on the horizon for TSSAA schools.
Tennessee has been very fortunate in the executive directors we've had over the years. we've had excellent. Ronnie was great, Bernard, and Mark's going to follow in those same footsteps. He's done a good job so far, and I think he's going to be, just like those others, a great executive director for our organization. Mm-hmm. He's a smart gentleman. He understands athletics. He researches it, and he's done a real good job.
What's it cost to run TSSAA?
Pretty expensive. I've got a handout or their yearly budget and so forth, but it's in the millions of dollars.
Somewhere around $5 million, I think.
3 or 4, I think.
And
am I find that for us?
And am I correct? The TSSAA has outgrown its building and needs to do something else. And as I understand, there is something coming. Is that right?
Yeah. In fact, I've got a meeting at 1:00 to talk with Mark and Mr. Reed, who's president of the council, about a committee to put together and look at that. And we've run out of space there. Of course, we've added personnel because we've added so many more sports over the last, 10 years, 15 years. Mm-hmm. So we need more room. And we've got area that they can build. We could build on part of the property that TSSAA already owns and sell our building, and that's probably going to be the cheapest. It'd be cheaper probably to build than it would be to renovate what we have. Mm-hmm. But that's something that this committee is going to work on and decide over the next year or so.
We're getting closer to district and regional basketball tournaments and so forth, and then you move right back into baseball, softball, and other sports that were here. I'm going to go back to changes. One of the big changes that took place a couple of years ago is making 4 divisions in high school basketball. Has that worked out healthy, or is it maybe we need to look at that and go back to 3?
I don't think we'll ever go back. It'll be a while, but in some aspects of it, it's been very, very good. It gives smaller schools and some other schools a little more balance in the numbers and so forth against the teams they're playing. It also, one of the negative is probably increased travel for people because our districts have gotten a little bit smaller and we've had to, travel more to get to our district games. So, but I think overall most schools have they support it. It was supported very highly when it was passed by the membership. And I think most schools still feel pretty comfortable with it. The biggest disadvantage is just the travel involved. Mm-hmm.
Let me move back to one other thing. Who sets the price on tickets to a ball game at home, away, etc.?
Usually that school does.
Yeah. And what do you think is a fair price for a ticket to see a high school football or basketball, baseball game?
Right now, I guess a fair price is $7. That's what most people are charging. Yeah. I enjoyed the dollar days, but you've got to keep up with inflation, and schools have got to have enough money to run those programs, and they're not cheap. It's expensive to operate a good athletic program.
It's expensive to operate the TSSAA, and part of that goes back to, and correct me if I'm incorrect, you have insurance. You have things that have to be taken care of to make sure that football players' helmets are certified, and there's some other things too.
TSSAA furnishes insurance for all of our football and so forth, and that is a very expensive endeavor. I mean, football players, there's some injuries there that are, very bad, and it is expensive to do that, but we have to have it.
Is football, has it changed much in your years of being in education and athletics?
Kids have gotten bigger and stronger, quicker, but it's still competitive, and it's a good sport. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Is there one change that you see that maybe you can't get your colleagues to agree with you, but there's something that you would like to see in high school athletics that would make sports better, or maybe something that you see on the horizon that would be good for TSSAA member schools?
I can't think of anything right offhand, but the TSSAA is always looking at things that might make our organization better, things that might come up, and there are going to be some from time to time that changes are going to have to be made in some things, as we've seen all through the history of it.
Do you have a contingency plan now for COVID?
We would use probably the same one that we had if we have that predicament again. You know, it's going to really, a lot of different issues get involved in that, and it's different for, every school. And it depends on what role, the government plays in all this.
Mm-hmm. How did that affect TSSAA's financial statement?
It hurt it some, just because everybody's crowds were cut back, and state tournament was not quite as big. I think we had numbers there also. It made a difference.
One day of sports, and then everything else was shut down for the next 2 weeks.
Yeah, one of them it was. Yeah, when it first came out. In fact, the state tournament was stopped. Girls' state tournaments at the semifinal round, and it canceled after that. Mm-hmm. But that's what Dr. I think it's Schaefer with Vanderbilt said we need to do. So I'm not going to argue with him. Mm-hmm. But hopefully we won't have to face that again.
Do you see the football championship games being able to move back, maybe a little bit back to where they were, or they're going to stay in Chattanooga for the next few years?
I think they will stay, but I think TSSAA is always looking, for different venues, and would like to have it located, maybe more centrally located, but having a spot to do that, it's not always easy. The MTSU there for a long time, and that's a great spot, but you also had conflicts with things that they had going on. So it's an issue, and it's a lot of work. Cookville for years hosted it, and they kind of backed off of it just because of what all is required of that community to do it. It's a lot of preparation and a lot of hard work and a lot of man hours to make all that come off as smooth as you'd like for it to.
We haven't really talked about this. I won't dance around it. I'll get right to it. And this is the subject of sportsmanship. Arguments that take place either on the court or up in the stands, and referees have to become the judge, whatever it happens to be, and so forth. How are we today? I mean, we've had a lot of things through the years, but is it better today, or is it about like it's been?
I would like to think that it's better. I've been to a lot of basketball games this year, and only one time have I seen a fan that was forced to leave the gym. I think what TSSAA did, requiring that official to go to that school administrator and let them try to take care of the problem first, is the best way to handle it. They also added a $250 fine, so I think that helped curtail folks a little bit. Because most schools, talk to their parents and their membership about their school membership about behavior at games and so forth, and I think that was helpful.
I'll leave you with the last thought here. What's your message right now to parents who have students that are playing high school sports?
I would encourage parents to support their children and what they're doing. Also, I would ask them to be sure and use the proper sportsmanship and so forth, and be positive with their child. And they make a big difference. Parents do.
Seems to me, and I'm new to this in some respects, but it seems to me that the open field, and I'm talking soccer right now, and I could be saying softball or baseball, but you seem to have those that you could hear them much louder.
You can, and that is a factor. It has to be taken into consideration. That's right. That's true. When you're sitting right behind the umpire and you say something, you hear about everything you're saying.
Hope you've enjoyed our visit today with Dan Black, Bradford High School Superintendent, longtime educator, and also coach. And we've been talking about the TSSAA. Thank you very much for listening today here to this week's 30 Minutes program. I'm Paul Tinkle, pre-recorded.